Welcome to Ag PhD. I'm Brian Hefty.
And I'm Darren Hefty. Thanks for joining us today. You know, one of the biggest challenges in soybean fields, and we're standing in one from this year, is soybean cyst nematodes. We're going to talk about how you can manage that for success going forward.
Another really important thing if you want success on your farm is how do you get a good test weight out of any crop that you're raising? We're going to talk about some of the steps you can take on your farm this year on today's show.
We have a very difficult to control weed of the week, and I know a lot of times I'll say, oh, it's a tough to control weed. This one is really a challenge. We'll show you how to stop it coming up later in the show. But first, here's today's Farm Basics.
Farm Basics is brought to you by the Liberty Link trait and Liberty herbicide from Bayer. The most reliable weed management solution, Liberty Link and Liberty herbicide are the link to efficient row crop production and sustainable weed management.
During our Farm Basics time today, we thought we'd talk just a little bit about some of the things we're going to be attending and many farmers are going to be attending this winter. So for example, National Farm Machinery Show, a huge show for farmers. People come from all over the country. It's in Louisville, Kentucky, and Darren and I are actually going to be there. So if you'd like to join us on Thursday, February 12th, we'll have a short little 1-hour agronomy session from 2 to 3, as well as do the live Ag PhD radio show from 3 to 4. Then on Friday, February 13th, we're going to do a little soils session. So if you didn't get a chance to attend any of our soils clinics this winter, you can come to this soils session from 9 to 10 a.m. and then following immediately after that, we're going to do our radio show from 10 to 11.
As we're bundled up outside today, Brian, I'm just thinking about the warm weather events like Phoenix, Arizona.
Right.
Commodity Classic is there this year, and on Friday, February 27th, we're going to be doing our radio show that we do in the afternoons. We're going to do it live in front of an audience there at Commodity Classic. We're excited about that because we love that live feedback, and it's one thing to give us a call while we're doing the radio show, and we sure encourage you to do that. But if you're at Commodity Classic, you can ask us questions face-to-face live, and I think that's pretty fun.
Darren and I will also be doing some individual events this winter. So I, for example, will be speaking at the Wisconsin Corn and Soybean Expo at Wisconsin Dells on Friday, January 30th. Got a lot of different things going on this winter. We just invite you to go to agphd.com. You can also check out our winter workshops, our agronomy workshops, our soils clinics, tiling clinics, all those things we've got there. And then, Darren, we got to talk just a minute about our summer field day this coming summer.
I'm really excited about that because, frankly, I got a little payback to do here. Brian and our Brian versus Darren corn plots actually beat me for once. I don't know what happened. There must have been some kind of error out in the field. Of course, in soybeans, I spanked him and gave him a lesson there. But we'll have another shot at redemption for Brian next summer at our field day. But seriously, there's so much going on there. We're going to have so many things at our field day for you to see that, you know, you can hear about all these things we're talking about on the show, but it's a whole other thing to actually see them in the field. Oh, they're talking about this biological product. They're talking about plant growth hormones, and they're talking about multiple applications of fungicide in wheat. Let's see what that looks like. Let's see if that brings value and if it gives us a return on investment.
It's Thursday, July 30th, and we really encourage you to come. It's the largest private farm field day in the United States. We're hoping to have better than 10,000 farmers there this year. One of the things Darren mentioned, the Brian versus Darren, but we're going to have some of the top corn, soybean, and wheat farmers in the whole country also competing against us with their plots on our farm. It's going to be a lot of fun. We just really encourage you, try to make it to this event. It's just a one-day thing, but you will have a great time, I promise you.
Well, one of the things that you won't see at our field day on our farm is our weed of the week. We'll show you how to stop this tough weed coming up later in the show.
What's next in weed control technology? Roundup Ready 2 Extend soybeans will provide tolerance to dicamba and glyphosate and will be built on the Genuity Roundup Ready to Yield trait. See them in action at extendfollowafield.com.
A farmer's attention to detail is what makes the difference. You take the time for service management because you know how vital it is to your operation. You service your field like everything else because soil sampling makes all the difference and gets the results you want. Download the app Soil Test Pro and start grid sampling today. Keep your farm growing strong. The more you test, the more you know.
Some prefer to invest in fields halfway around the world, in short-term solutions to long-term challenges. At Poet, we're investing in the fields we have right here at home, cultivating communities and growing the local economy, creating new local jobs while we create worldwide energy solutions, helping family farms grow even as they fuel the world. Because we know that investing in a community can pay global dividends. See the world differently with POET.
I wish I could apply all the PK and micronutrients this crop needs at planting.
You can. When your soils are not excessively nutrient deficient, you can apply a whole season of PK and micronutrients when you plant and get top yields at harvest. AgroLiquid's exceptional nutrient compatibility and superior efficiency allows you to prescription apply everything your crop needs safely and conveniently. Research proves it. For more info, go to agroliquid.com.
If you could see how nitrogen loss causes yield loss, you'd fix it. So fix it right, with the stabilizer proven to reduce all 3 ways nitrogen escapes. Nutrisphere N Nitrogen Fertilizer Manager. It keeps nitrogen in a more readily available form longer. With today's market and environment, it's a high priority to keep your nitrogen on track. To higher yield with Nutrisphere N.
A proven herbicide for decades, dicamba can provide burn-down residual control of tough and resistant weeds for up to 14 days. That's another reason why farmers will use dicamba for years to come. Brought to you by Roundup Ready Plus Weed Management Solutions.
How can you increase test weight in your crops on your farm this coming year?
You know, there's a couple of challenges to raising higher yields. One is to get more kernels of grain out there in the field, and the next is to make every kernel weigh as much as it possibly can. And when I think about test weight, this is one of the things that I'll hear from farmers, man, my test weight was down this year and it really cost me, or my test weight on my corn was 62 pounds. Wow, it's fantastic. I got great yields out there because my corn weighed so much.
All right, let's start with the discussion on wheat, because this one is pretty simple. There's lots of data out there showing that it comes down to one main thing. Now, certainly there are a number of other things you can do that'll help a little bit, but there's one main thing: having more nitrogen availability later on in the season. That's the real key. What ends up happening a lot of times when farmers get high yield on wheat, then what happens to your test weight? Your test weight's lower, and you say, well, how can that be? Why is my test weight lower? Well, here's why. Because your nitrogen went into producing more yield and there wasn't enough left to fill out that kernel and give you a nice test weight. So what you have to do in that situation is one of a couple of things. One is the long term. Over the long term, to have more nitrogen availability late in the season, you build up your soil organic matter. If you had 2% organic matter today and you were able to build it to 5% over your farming career, that's a big deal. That's going to mean you're going to have 60 to 90 more pounds come available late in the season just from the breakdown of organic matter, okay? So that's how you do it in the long term. But in the short term, what you're going to have to do is most likely add some nitrogen late in the season. You can certainly spray it right over the top of the crop. There are some guys that do that, but you get a little bit more leaf burn that way. What we prefer to do on our farm is do a stream bar application, but that's only going to work real well if you get rain after that. That's what we would advise you to do. Just get some nitrogen out late in the season, but in the long term, build your soil's organic matter.
All right, you talk about nitrogen, and one crop that really there isn't enough nitrogen discussion around is soybeans. When we think about soybeans, they're a legume crop. They'll have nodules on the roots, and those nodules can produce, you know, depending on who you want to listen to, up to about 70% of the nitrogen needs of that soybean plant. The other 30% needs to come from the soil, whether that's organic matter breakdown or applied nitrogen or whatnot. But if we want to have that 70% out of those nodules, we've got to do everything right to make sure we have good microbial activity in our soil. Now, you mentioned organic matter, and I agree 100%. We've got to have good levels of organic matter, but we've also got to keep that pH fairly neutralized. If we get way to one extreme or the other, either high pH or low pH, all of a sudden those little bacteria that are working in the nodules, instead of 70% of your nitrogen needs for your soybean plants, they may only produce 50% or even 25%. So take a look at that, regulate that pH on a legume crop like soybeans, for example, to keep that nitrogen production up.
Okay, you've mentioned organic matter a couple of times already, and here's the reason why, just so we're clear on this. For every 1% of organic matter in soil that you have, each year that soil through mineralization is going to produce for free for you 20 to 30 pounds of nitrogen for every 1% of organic matter. So in a 5% organic matter soil, that's 100 to 150 pounds. So Darren mentioned soybeans, and the reason why I wanted to come back to this organic matter thing is a lot of guys run trials on, well, I'm going to try nitrogen on my soybeans. Do you think that's a good idea? And I say, well, show me your soil test. Well, I don't have any soil test data, but do you think this is a good idea? I say, well, I don't know. Here's why. If you have a low organic matter soil, then I know you're not going to get much nitrogen out of the soil. You should probably apply some. If you have high organic matter soil, you're probably going to get a bunch of free nitrogen this summer, so why would you apply any more? It's not going to make sense. It's probably not going to work real well if you do trials on your farm. And I don't care if we're talking soybeans, corn, wheat, almost anything, in low organic matter soils, that's where you really have to look at applying more nitrogen.
The other thing is, if you're drastically short in micronutrients, that's going to limit nitrogen production from nodules, but also just your protein building in your plant. You do need, in addition to nitrogen, you need good levels of micronutrients too. That's something to keep an eye on. If you took good soil tests this fall, look back at those soil tests, check what those micronutrient levels are, because it may not just be a maintenance level that you need to be applying when you're planting your crop next spring. You may need to put on additional build levels of micronutrients to try to get them up to where they need to be.
Micronutrients are important, but sulfur is as well. And the thing that I would bring up here is if you look at nitrate, sulfate, and boron, those are all very leachable. So in other words, I don't care if you've applied them in the past, you probably need to apply them again this year. So I'd take a real hard look at your nitrogen, your sulfur, and your boron every single year for every single crop.
You know, speak about low test weight, Brian. We had some ground that was low test weight not that many years ago, where the fertilizer balance was just not right in the soil. Those soils, we were putting on plenty of nitrogen and wondering, well, why is that not working? Yet we had excessive levels, like in the ground that we're standing on right here, of magnesium, and all of a sudden we have to put on way more nitrogen when we've got high magnesium soils to do the same job if we had our soils in balance with the nutrient levels. So like in this soil, for example, we're applying a lot more calcium, and it's helping out in things like test weight. And you say, well, wait a second, why is that going on? Because our nitrogen efficiency has gone way up, and we've got our nutrients back in balance. Everything in our soil is working better. And when you have poor test weights in your grain, you need to look at your fertility program, and you need to look at those soils that you're dealing with, because if you've got issues in the soils that you're not dealing with, it's going to cost you in test weight. Now, one other caution that I'll give you, let's say that you put some low test weight corn into a bin, and I'll just use corn for an example. When we see low test weight corn, those kernels are just a little bit softer. It seems like we have more spoilage issues with them. Keep a close eye on low test weight grain. This is where we see spoilage issues and big time storage problems. We don't want that to happen for you.
One last thing I guess I'd mention, Darren talked about high magnesium soils. Potassium is really the big thing in high magnesium soils. A lot of times we have just terrible issues getting potassium into the plant. So you've got to get that potassium base saturation up above 4%. That does help out standability. It does help out, with any lodging issues that you've been having. But in addition to that, you get better grain quality, and test weight is one of the side benefits of that.
Well, one other thing to improve test weight in any grain is keeping weeds out of the field that are competing against your crop. Weeds like our weed of the week. Can you identify this week's weed?
We know that the future is liquid. That's how Agroculture Liquid Fertilizer creates the highest quality products on the market. Because we're committed to finding the best raw materials at the best price possible and getting them from us to you in the most sustainable, responsible ways possible. Agroculture Liquid Fertilizers, helping you grow the future.
Morton Buildings. Great buildings built for the great outdoors. Contact us today to take advantage of discount pricing during our annual Building Value Day sale.
Working in agriculture over the past 3 decades, I saw a need for an accurate way to apply dry product to seed. That's where our Changing Times applicators come in. The CT applicator brush sifts powder into small particles, resulting in proper distribution. Quantities can be adjusted by the speed of the brush rotation. This allows for even and accurate distribution of product. Application at the time of planting can be used with any seed delivery system and saves farmers time, labor, and money. Remember, CT applicators for the Changing Times.
For lower cost, higher production, Mandaco Agri leads with versatility unmatched. Twister is the vertical tillage unit for no-till as well as conventional tillage. Twister's ease of maintenance is forgiving and rocks and has contour conformity equaling 0 downtime. Our hydraulically adjusted coulter angles make residue management easier, less costly. Spring or fall, the Mandaco Twister vertical tillage unit is the new leader. See your Mandaco Agri dealer. Visit northcountrymarketing.biz or call.
This year's projected U.S. soybean yield will lose over $500 million per point in shrink. Eliminate shrink in your bin. Store grain without lowering moisture content with the AgriDry Bullseye Temperature and Moisture Controller. The Bullseye monitors air temperature and relative humidity, allowing your fans to utilize the weather's natural condition to maintain your grain at market moisture. Fan run times drastically decrease along with the cost of over-drying. Eliminate shrink today. Call now.
I hate problems that you just can't deal with, Brian. Soybean cyst nematode, it's a curse. You can't get rid of it out of the soil. So what do you do to manage it and still maintain and improve your yields?
All right, well, the easy answer is to say, well, don't plant soybeans then, okay? Go to corn for several years,
so
and that's really going to lower the issue. Well, seriously though, if you've got cyst nematode that's just so ridiculously bad that it's taking 20, 30 bushels off your yield, even when you're planting a cyst bean, then switch away for a few years. That's your best bet. But in most cases, it's not taking 20 or 30 bushels. It's probably taking 2 to 5, maybe 10, and there certainly are management strategies you can use to get those bushels back.
If you've got soybean cyst nematodes in your area and you think, well, I don't have them on my farm, do a little bit of testing. The nematode levels are going to fluctuate throughout the season, so you may hit a time where there aren't high numbers, but you may take a couple of samples throughout the growing season.
What's the best way to test? Because we've had a lot of guys test. They come out, well, there's nothing. There are almost no nematodes out here, but I know I have nematodes.
It's tough because they're going to be patchy throughout the field. They aren't like the.
So go to the hot spot is the first thing.
Yeah, if you've got a yield
sample in the row. Okay, if you've got a cyst nematode issue, we want you to plant a cyst nematode resistant variety. The problem is there's really only one trait that's working good in good yielding varieties.
Well, okay, I wouldn't say there's one trait that's working good necessarily, but there's
in good yielding varieties. That's the trouble.
Yeah, there's a couple of traits out there. There's the Peking trait, which has been really historically associated with low yields. And then there's the Fayette gene, or the PI88788 gene, that gets used in almost every nematode resistant variety in the country. And that's the one that, okay, we see higher yields with that gene. That's why guys want to use that. Will there be a benefit switching to the Peking? Absolutely, in certain cases there will be. You really have to work with your seed provider on that in your specific area as to which gene might be the best play for you. But keep in mind, there are only 2 out there, and that doesn't give you a lot of choices.
One of the things I'm kind of excited about now is Clareva Complete is out, and that actually does kill cyst nematodes. So that is a seed treatment you can put on your seed. It's basically a natural product that they found. So we've got natural soil microbes that are going to be in the soil that will kill the soybean cyst nematode, and besides that, they're going to stay in the soil, is what the Syngenta people have told me. So hopefully this could help our situation going forward. If we can actually lower our cyst counts, maybe the next time you rotate back to soybeans, you don't have as much of an issue as you do this year.
Well, rotation only works if you have great weed control, because there are a number of weed species that are actually hosts for soybean cyst nematodes, and basically allow those nematodes to skip your rotation and be just as tough as ever when you plant beans again.
In most cases with soybean cyst nematode, what we find is it's not just a cyst nematode problem, it's also an iron deficiency chlorosis problem, or a sudden death syndrome problem, or something else, a lack of nutrients or whatever. So my point is this: if you do a great job managing every other aspect of your farming operation, then cyst nematode is not going to hurt you as much. So get the drainage right. That's number 1. Then number 2, fix the fertility. Get good complete soil tests, not just some of this stuff. Get the full thing, and then find out what you have to do and fix your soil. If you can solve the drainage issue and the soil fertility issue, you're most of the way home. And cyst nematode, yeah, they might still be there, and yeah, they might still hurt you, but instead of hurting you 10 bushels an acre or 5, maybe they're only hurting you a bushel or 2, then it's not quite so bad.
Now, the other theory I've got is getting compaction taken care of too. So if you've got all your roots just in a shallow 4-inch, 6-inch soil profile, you're just so much more susceptible to soybean cyst nematodes. Now all the roots are there, and you're going to find every nematode that's out in your field. If you can get some roots that go down deeper, even if you do have some nematodes up top, at least you've got some roots that are really working for you.
Well, once again, soybean cyst nematode is a terrible problem. You're most likely never going to eliminate it from your soil, but there are certainly things you can do to reduce the issue, reduce the populations, and yes, you can rotate away from soybeans even for 2 or 3 years. That'll really help the problem. But as long as you're planting resistant varieties, using a good seed treatment, and fixing all the rest of the issues, especially drainage and fertility on your farm, cyst nematode shouldn't hurt your yields that bad this year.
One other big yield robber is our Weed of the Week. We'll show you how to stop it coming up next.
The Weed of the Week is sponsored by the Enlist Weed Control System from Dow AgroSciences, a new herbicide and trait system that will build on glyphosate.
Farming isn't just in the land, it's in you. Take control of weeds like never before. Enlist builds on the Roundup Ready system, combining proven control of a new 2,4-D and glyphosate in Enlist Duo herbicide. Protect what matters without changing the way you farm. Talk to your seed or crop protection supplier today.
Our weed of the week is Johnsongrass, but not just any Johnsongrass. This Johnsongrass we're talking about is Roundup resistant and ALS resistant.
All right, so what's left?
Right.
That's what a lot of farmers are asking across the country. I hope you're not one of them, but yeah, Johnsongrass is considered one of the 10 worst weeds in the entire world. And you think about just controlling something that Roundup doesn't kill and it's a perennial, that's pretty scary to me. And then if the ALS family doesn't work, your options just start to get a little more limited as to what's going to actually do a good job. So the big key with Johnsongrass is not to let it spread, not to let it go to seed, to try to kill it when it's in the seedling stage, because in the seedling stage, there are actually some products that do a decent job.
Yeah, and this weed is especially tough because it can really take a lot of your yield, and it also can be poisonous to cattle and to horses.
Well, if you get an early frost or you have an extreme drought, you can't let cattle and horses graze on any Johnsongrass because it contains enough hydrogen cyanide to actually kill cattle and horses. Now, that's a serious weed.
Right. So let's talk about control methods. In soybeans, it's a little bit easier than in the grass crops because we've got Treflan, Sonalan, and Prowl. So you use those things down at the full labeled rate and then follow post-emerge with one of the grass killers. There are plenty of them available like Arrow, Select Max, and a number of others.
Well, and Pursuit and Raptor also have some activity on Johnsongrass, so if you incorporate them into your broadleaf control program, that could give you a little added boost as well. In wheat, you know, when we look at wheat, we don't have the big Johnsongrass issue all the time, but we would start off with Prepare as a pre-emerge herbicide.
Well, that's ALS. If you've got ALS-resistant Johnsongrass, then you're going to want to use Zidua on the pre-side. Zidua is in the same chemical family as Harness, Surpass, Outlook, and Dual.
And then post-emerge Axial to Discover. While not great, at least on the seedling Johnsongrass, they can hold that back.
Okay, going to corn, Balance Flex is probably the best option. Harness, Surpass, Outlook, Dual, Zidua, they all have some suppression, just like the Balance Flex. Suppression only, that's it. Post-emerge, it gets really challenging because we've got Roundup, we have Accent, we have Beacon, but if the weed is resistant to Roundup and it's resistant to the ALS products like Accent and Beacon, then all you're left with really is Liberty on Liberty Link corn.
Yeah, and if you've got Liberty Link crops, Liberty does a nice job on seedling Johnsongrass. And that's why I say, once you see any Johnsongrass out there at all, you've got to wipe it out fast and stay after it until you get every last plant, or you're going to have some big problems.
And if nothing else in a burn down, just use Gramoxone. You probably have to use it multiple times in a burn down, not in crop, and in a burn down. So if Roundup isn't working for you, I'd try Gramoxone. That'll at least burn it to the ground.
Well, our weed of the week, Johnsongrass is considered one of the 10 worst weeds in the world. Don't let it get a foothold on your farm.
Well, that's it for our weed of the week, but stay tuned. Iron Talk is coming up next.
Iron Talk is brought to you by Case IH.
The AFS Connect Farm Management System from Case IH connects you, and only you, to the information you need most from your equipment, from anywhere, at any time. AFS Connect, only from Case IH.
On Ag PhD, we like to discuss agronomy solutions for your farm. If your planter is functioning perfectly, we can avoid some of these problems before they happen. I'll share how quickly planter issues can get into your pocketbook on today's Iron Talk. Seed spacing and depth is critical in corn production. When you're doing your stand counts this year, here are a couple things to watch for. First, seed depth. On corn, you want your depth to be at 1.5 inches to 2.5 inches. If it's varying as you go across the field, it's either your planter or the tillage that you've used in the field. Now is the time to address the problem. Secondly, seed spacing. Doubles, triples, and skips kill yield. We all know that. But the most common problem is something people don't think about. It's the hitch height on the planter. Your bar needs to be level. If the planter leans up or down, it just doesn't work right. This leads to uneven spacing and uneven emergence. How big of a deal is all this? Just one more ear per 1/1000th of an acre equates to approximately 7 bushels per acre, figuring 30,000 seeds and 200 bushel yield goal. If you're dropping 31,000 seeds, figure out why the other 1,000 seeds per acre aren't amounting to anything and fix the problem. On 1,000 acres, it's costing you close to $30,000 with this problem. That pays for quite a bit of your time this winter and a lot of parts. That's all for today's Iron Talk, and now back to the show. It's easy to stay busy on your farm over the winter, hauling grain, getting ready for next spring, or a host of other jobs that always seem pressing. However, if you want to make 2015 your best year ever, it's important to invest some of your time learning. I invite you to spend at least one day attending a free Ag PhD workshop. We have a new format, new information, and more tips to help you improve your yield and, most importantly, your profits. Go to agphd.com and register today.
Dirty work pays. That is if your dirty work includes a SoilMax Gold Digger tile plow. SoilMax tile plows feature zero deflection technology. With the only tile plow factory paired with Ag Leader's IntelliSlope control system, you eliminate the need for grade calculations and lasers. So make your next investment in a SoilMax Gold Digger. Better yield, longer planting and harvest windows, better water management is all yours with SoilMax. Visit soilmax.com.
How will you secure your farm for the future? The Quasar Chopping Cornhead from Capello USA will help. Our design is focused on efficiency, longevity, and reducing harvest loss, making the Quasar the corn harvest solution to bring your farm forward. With hundreds of units ready for immediate delivery, secure your farm's future today. Do it for your farm, do it for them. Order now. Capello USA, Italian craftsmanship, American grit.
Looking to maximize yield? QuickRoots from Monsanto Bioag is a microbial seed inoculant that allows the plant root to explore a greater volume of soil, the key to higher yields. QuickRoots continues to generate yield response on corn, soybeans, wheat, and more, and is applied to the seed so the live microorganisms go right to work enhancing seedling vigor, increasing the uptake of certain nutrients including NPK, and expanding root volume. Maximize yield on your farm this season. Get QuickRoots today.
My data is mine, not mined.
Mine to share,
Mine to keep. It's mine when I want it.
mine where I want it,
And only mine. My data is mine to analyze.
mine to put to work.
Mine to control. It's mine.
The AFS Connect Farm Management System from Case IH connects you, and only you, to the information you need most from your equipment, from anywhere, at any time. AFS Connect, only from Case IH.
If you could see how nitrogen loss causes yield loss, you'd fix it. So fix it right, with the stabilizer proven to reduce all 3 ways nitrogen escapes. Nutrisphere N Nitrogen Fertilizer Manager. It keeps nitrogen in a more readily available form longer. With today's market and environment, it's a high priority to keep your nitrogen on track. To higher yield with Nutrisphere N.
Closed captioning for Ag PhD is sponsored by Norwood Sales.
On your farm, you need speed and year-round effectiveness in your tillage program. The Quick Till from Norwood Sales allows you to move quickly through your fields, maximizing time and improving yield. Constructed of heavy-duty materials, the Quick Till is ideal for both spring and fall applications, from preparing a healthy seedbed early in the season to breaking up corn residue after harvest. For more information about how a Quick Till can improve fields on your farm, call Norwood Sales today.
That's all the time we have for today's show, but if you're looking for more agronomic information, we invite you to tune in to the Ag PhD radio show. You can find us each weekday at 2 p.m. Central on SiriusXM Channel 80.
And don't miss the next Ag PhD TV show, where we have another Iron Talk, Weed of the Week, Farm Basics, and a whole lot more. I'm Darren Hefty.
And I'm Brian Hefty. Thanks for watching Ag PhD.
American ethanol is made primarily from corn. Did you realize that the type of corn used for ethanol and livestock feed is much different than the sweet corn on your dinner table? For more information, visit the Responsible Nutrient Management Foundation at rnmf.org.